welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. I'm Nancy Alspaugh Jackson.
And I'm still Shannon Penrod.
You are. You're still Shannon.
And I'm excited to be here with you, but I admitted to Nancy earlier that I'm crabby today.
Yeah.
And there's a lot in the news that's making me crabby.
Okay.
And some of it we're going to get to.
Okay, we're going to
I've
get
told
to it
them
in a
that the
minute.
top of my head might fly off and fly around the room.
Okay.
Samantha likes it when I completely go off. And we're going
I like
to
it
make
when you go
Samantha
off,
happy.
too. Okay. I like it when you go off,
I
too.
have stuff to go off about today.
I have a feeling I'm going to be right there with you.
Yeah, I think so too. But let's start with things that aren't as go-offable about, although some of them have a little bit to go off about, quite honestly.
This study out of Scientific American that
that's in
children
there, right.
of smart fathers have higher risk of autism.
Yeah. What I find interesting about this is that, you know, it used to be back in the old days, and we're going to talk about the old days quite a bit within the news, you know, when there was the whole canner thing with autism and the refrigerator mothers, and they depicted dads as being these cold, removed, intellectual guys.
Right.
And so there was a researcher, Renee Gardner, she's a professor at the Karolinska Institute in Stockholm, decided she wanted to check and see whether these old wives' tales about autism are accurate. So, you know, does a smart dad make you more likely to have autism? And what she did, so here's where it gets fuzzy for me.
Okay.
Because they always go, well, here's the headline.
Right.
Smart dads are more likely to have autism.
31% higher risk, it says.
Right. Well, what she did, she studied a pretty wide amount of people, 309,803 children whose fathers were conscripted into the Swedish military. And all of the fathers' scores on the technical portion of the Swedish intelligence quotient was the IQ test was what they gauged it by. And so if a dad had an IQ of 111 or higher, they were 31% more likely to have a child who's on the autism spectrum. But you know, everybody who's conscripted into the Swedish army, I don't know if that is a reasonable representation of humans on the planet.
Right.
Like, and they don't tell us that. Is that like what criteria gets you conscripted into the Swedish army?
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't know. What else do these men have in common with the fact that they got conscripted into the Swedish army and they have a higher IQ? I kind of want to know that. That seems like it would be an important thing to me. But it did say, you know, that what it does say to me is that genes play a role. And, you know, like that's not the craziest thing that we've heard. I did think that the other side of it that was interesting is that if the father's IQ is 75 or below, that they have a 4.5 times higher risk of an intellectual disability or ADHD. ADHD was 65% higher than average for children whose fathers had an IQ in that lower range.
So it's the opposite of having autism for the higher range. I mean, there's ADHD in the lower range.
Right. Well, this is what they found from this particular group of people who were conscripted into the Swedish army. Like, you know, I don't know.
I know.
Like that seems like a very specific thing to me. So I have issues with that. But if you want to read more about it, you can in Scientific America, scientificamerican.com.
And here's another study that was in the Washington Post, what children from Romanian orphanages can tell us about autism. And that is that physical deprivation, psychophysical or psychosocial deprivation in infancy can also lead to autism-like behaviors.
Right. And the sad truth of this is that for long periods of time in Romania, they had so many children that they just stuck them in their cribs and left them in rooms, and all they basically did was change them and feed them. And there was no interaction, there was no loving, tender care. And that then over a period of decades, those children were adopted out to other people, and that it seemed like a high number of those children ended up on the autism spectrum. And so again, we're making the jump to, well, obviously these children had no interaction, so that must have caused the autism, which then we get back into that mode of, oh, refrigerator mothers who don't really spend time with their kids. But I think, you know, what's interesting to me again is when you pull apart the numbers beyond the headline, that what it ended up being was that about 10% of the kids in the Romanian orphanages got those quasi-autism diagnoses later on, and they weren't socially interacting. But that seems like a fairly wouldn't you think that if not having interaction caused autism, that 90% of those kids would have autism? Wouldn't that make even more sense? Like 10% seems like it's
reasonable
almost
number.
It's almost like on target with what the general population is. So again, I don't know. The headline is what children from Romanian orphanages can tell us about autism. I think what we need to make sure is that there are no more orphanages like this.
Exactly.
I think that's what we learned from that. Thank you so very much.
And here's a very scientific one that was in Scientific American.
Yeah.
That autism may be linked to cells that prune brain connections.
Yes. And this is a pretty in-depth, a little bit over my head.
Right.
Once we start talking about cellular and pruning of, but you can read this article again in scientificamerican.com. I don't really get it other than they're seeing that there is a cell that makes a difference. If you have that on board, then you will have a different reaction than if you don't.
And it's that the number and behavior of those cells are called microglia vary in boys and girls, a finding that could help explain why many more boys are diagnosed with autism.
And that there's a possibility that if they can figure out then how to make sure that you have more of that, then you will be protected against it. So that's the thing that we're going to be looking for in the future, because perhaps they can change the equation, I think, is the exciting news out of there. Okay, now can we move on to talk about some of the stuff that's really tearing my ticket?
Yes.
Which do you want to do first, Nancy?
Do you want to start with this?
Let's take on Fox first.
Do you want to take on Fox that
I
took
want
on
to take
a
on
young
Fox,
boy with autism?
and then we can take on the Senate in Alabama.
Right.
Yeah.
So
okay,
an incident occurred.
An incident did occur, and it was widely covered. Last Thursday and Friday it was Military Appreciation Day or something of this sort, and a bunch of military families got together with their kids, and President Pence was at that, and oh boy, it made so many headlines in amongst all of the other stuff that was going on. Right. They kept showing, because I saw it certainly on several, and I wasn't watching that much news, of the little boy who, when Pence was talking and gesturing, there was one moment when he said, "Aren't these kids great?" or whatever it was, and he made contact with one little boy's nose behind him. And that little boy, the little boy was smiling when it happened, but you could tell that there were certain things that he's been taught, that he understands, and that wasn't supposed to happen to him. Okay. And so he, kind of followed the vice president around a little bit. The footage is there. And then he eventually, said, "Excuse me," very politely. Right. Said, "Excuse me." And Vice President Pence was busy doing something else, didn't hear him the first time. And he said, "Excuse me, you owe me an apology." And to his credit, Vice President Pence turned around and said, "I'm sorry, what?" And the little boy said, "When you, did whatever, you hit my nose, and you owe me an apology." And Vice President Pence, I have never liked him more than in this moment. Can I say that? Okay. Because you can tell how people are by how they are with children. Right. I mean, honestly. Yes. And he was in the middle of doing something, and he's a photo op, and he's doing all these things, but he stopped what he was doing. He said he was sorry. He leant down, he put his arm around the little boy, and he said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize, I'm so sorry." And you could tell that the little boy was like, "Okay, this moment has been completed," and everything was fine, and everybody, showed that on all the news. It's so cute. Okay. And then we come to Fox News on Friday night, on Tucker Carlson Tonight, and we had Bill Hemmer and Tammy Bruce, who apparently, had some time to fill. I guess, because I can't even imagine going on and on about this. And, and here's the thing that, there's so many things about this that upset me. But Bill Hemmer, who I guess was filling in for Tucker Carlson, and his guest was Tammy Bruce, who hosts a podcast. Bill Hemmer set her up and said, oh, kids these days, they're telling their parents what to do. They're telling the teachers what to do. And I guess now they're telling the vice president what to do. And said to her, you know, what do you think about this? Then she went off.
About the fact that the 8-year-old had stalked the vice president.
And that is the word that she used.
Yes, she did.
She said stalked.
She said that he said he was hit, he was struck, he was smashed, he was bumped. The fabric on his sleeve touched his nose, maybe. He stalks the vice president, says, you owe me an apology. This is crazy. Now look, he's seen it either on television, maybe he's seen it at home perhaps, but he felt aggrieved.
Yes. And then she said, well, I guess we're giving birth to snowflakes now because that looked like that kid needed a safe space in that room. And of course, you know, snowflake is the word that has been used so much of the time. And I don't know whether it was him or her that used the word fragile. Are kids so fragile now that they need an apology? Mm-hmm. And see, well, let's just tell you that after this happened, a lot of people were unhappy mm-hmm. with this depiction mm-hmm. of this. The mom came forward.
Right.
And what a well-spoken, amazing woman she was. She wasn't yelling and screaming. She wasn't pointing fingers. But she said that she was devastated.
That he 10 years old and he is on the autism spectrum.
Yes, but she said
it
was devastating to watch these people that so many people had covered it and it was so cute and everybody, mm-hmm. you know, and then to watch people who don't know her son make assumptions about her son. They said, oh, he's probably 8. So they didn't even do their research or their homework, that he is on the autism spectrum, that he is a military kid. They had to have known that mm-hmm. for him to have been there. Mm-hmm. His mother is a doctor.
Right.
Thank you very much. A very intelligent, as I said, well-spoken, eloquent woman. And she said he loves the White House, that he was so excited to be there, and that okay, so she says, I was devastated. Let's quote her. And when I saw what they were saying, people who they didn't even know his age, they didn't know who he was, but really taking out of context a really innocent interchange between the vice president and my son. And they asked her on CNN, she did a lovely interview on CNN, they said, what is it that you would like? And much like her son, she very politely said, I think that they owe us an apology. I think that Fox owes us an apology. And she said, please, to Fox, don't use kids, whether they're typically developing kids. It doesn't matter that he's autistic or a military kid. Forget all that. He's a kid. And you don't use kids as examples on a national television program like that.
Right.
And
Tammy Bruce responded and apologized and said, her intention was never hurt a kid and his mom. We had absolutely no idea that Michael was on the autism spectrum.
Yes.
And as a gay woman and feminist, I've spent my adult life working to improve the lives of women and children who are disenfranchised. But suddenly this made a difference that he was autistic.
Yes. She says, and she went on to say, I get it. This is Tammy Bruce now saying, I get it and I apologize. I also appreciated the boy's mother's public comments and clarity on this. A main lesson here, no matter intent, is to leave kids out of our political discussions. We certainly agree on this. And she said, and thank you to the family involved and thank you for your service. So I just want to back up a little bit and say, I went and watched when she apologized, mm-hmm. and that I believe it was Hemmer who sets her up for the apology and says, oh, you know, in a very smarmy, you know, you have something to say. Mm-hmm. And then she says it and he goes, oh, yeah, well, thank you for that apology. He doesn't apologize at all for his part in it,
right?
Which I found offensive.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I understand that she said the things that were a little bit more, but he kept referring to it as being something, oh, so privileged, you know, how he says to her, I guess we're living in a different time now, huh? Well, you know what the truth is? We are living in a different time. We are living in a different time in which you should not be able to do anything to a child, and that children are not to be seen and heard. I don't care on the spectrum or not. So if a child is done wrong, whether it's intentional or not, Yes, he has been taught that you deserve an apology because that's what it should be, Fox News. Perhaps this is why you were having a problem and having to pay out so many large amounts for things that you said not such a big deal, but that people are taking you to court and having you write multi-million-dollar checks because you don't know what it means to apologize and you don't know what it means to do something that's inappropriate. The vice president didn't make a big deal out of this. He said, I'm really sorry.
Right.
I
and
did
it could
something.
have ended right there.
And it should have ended right there. But this whole idea of saying, well, we live in it, and he must have needed a safe space. Guess what? He did. In fact, all of our kids do, whether they're on the spectrum or not. I think you'll agree with me with this,
I agree
Nancy.
with that.
They are innocents. They should not have anything done deliberately to them. And when something does happen, because incidences happen, we should be modeling good behavior and saying, I'm sorry that that happened to you. That's the reasonable thing to do. So I want to know of Tammy. I forget what her name is now because I'm so heated about this. She says she's been an advocate for women and children forever. Why are you? It doesn't matter whether this child is on the autism spectrum.
That's what I thought.
Why are you saying that in any way, shape, or form that should be made fun of? That somebody needed that a child needs a safe, shame on you.
Yeah,
shame on all of you. And you know what? Most of all, shame on Fox for sending her forward to apologize when it was both of you. You both glommed onto this, and I think
made a big deal out of it.
And made a big deal out of it, and look to yourselves, because we do live in a different time where children should be allowed to say, no, I'm sorry. This little boy was taught properly. That is the rule of social society. That if you do something that in any way, intentional or not, inflicts upon another person, that it is incumbent upon you to say, I'm sorry. It's the very least of which you can do. Stop acting like that is privileged. That is what it should be. That's what human behavior should be. But I know that Fox is struggling with that right now.
Okay.
Make me mad. Okay. Now,
And
can
now
we
we
move
have-
on to Alabama?
We have one more situation here that we've been talking about for weeks now, and that is the autism bill in Alabama, which passed, but it passed with some big changes, or should I say big limitations.
And let me just say, I have already cried some tears over this morning for the families that are in Alabama, and I am ashamed of everyone in Alabama who it serves in the representatives, and not the representatives because they voted for it 100%. The Senate, one person dissented, and I don't know what their point of view on it was to dissent, but the fact that they changed the bill, and what they did was take our neediest folks in Alabama who would have had Medicare to get treatment for autism, which is the gold standard. Our Surgeon General said that 2 decades ago. This is not new, wake up, smell the coffee. These kids need and deserve help, and what you did was put in a provision that makes them wait a year and a half. Oh, may karma be visited upon you folks. A year and a half.
It delays coverage for those with Medicaid, all kids insurance, and what's called PEEHIP, the Public Education Employees Health Insurance Plan.
It is unconscionable what they have done. And the families, you know, many of the families have come forward and said, you know, we celebrate that some families are going to get it. And, you know, that's the way it has been across most of the states, is that some families get it before all families get it. But really, can we not learn? Alabama, you are so late to this party, and to show up so disheveled and almost kowtow to insurance and then shortchange the kids who need it the absolute most. How dare you? And truly, shame on you. And I hope that when you all go home tonight to your kids and to your grandkids, that you stop and think about, if somebody said to you, okay, now you're stuck with that, that if something happens with one of your kids, whatever it is, autism, diabetes, you know, head injury from a car crash, now you wait a year and a half that we know is the most, absolutely every single expert in the field of autism says early intervention is important, and you know perfectly well that the reason why you did it is because making them wait for a year and a half fulfills the other thing that you put in there, which is that there are caps on age. So those kids will be a year and a half older and they won't be able to get the full prescription. It is just plain despicable, mean, hateful. It is beyond ignorant. I have no words. Shame on you. Unbelievable. For our parents that are in Alabama who are sickened by this, I want you to know that we all are sickened with you, and we stand with you today for this pathetic, pathetic showing from your Senate. Disgusted.
They do say it's important to know that the version of the autism mandate bill is not completely done deal. The changes the Senate made now have to be approved by the House. Well, and signed by Governor Kay Ivey before the bill becomes law.
You know, so what are they going to? They're going to, and here's the thing, they put them in the place of saying, oh, well, then don't approve it.
Right.
And then nobody gets it. Well, you know what? I am so sick and tired of our politicians using our children as pawns for their financial dealings. It's disgusting and it has to stop.
So on that
On that note, puke. And
you
there we have it.
Good for you.
So frustrated.
It's extremely frustrating
for these families.
Extremely frustrating, and these families deserve better.
They absolutely deserve better. It's absolutely sickening.
Better.
Now, we have to switch gears.
Yes.
Because I believe, and it's one of the things that I sit firmly on here on this show, is that we're not going to candy coat it here, but we have to get back to talking about what we can do and what there is that's positive. And we have a guest who's going to be joining us in just a few minutes who is a dad who looked at an issue that wasn't happening for him and his daughter, and he said, I want to do better.
Yeah,
I'm going to take and I'm going to create something. We always talk about the power of one and how one parent can make a difference when they say, I'm going to do something positive. And this is a dad who has done that. And I think everybody's going to be excited to hear about the app that he created.
Which we had a mom and her child on who have benefited from the use of this app. And we're going to find out how his personal story created to make this happen. So we'll be back with Rob Laffin, CEO and founder of Tippytop, when we come back.
Stick with us.
Hello, fellow activists. Last week, we talked about step number 1, accept and embrace this challenge. Now we're moving on to step number 2, educate yourself. After my son Wyatt was diagnosed, I put up a sign over my home office that said Autism Central. I went to school in my home office every night after my husband and Wyatt had gone to bed because I was determined to learn everything there was about autism. That's because knowledge is power. Visit all the autism websites you can, read all the books you can, learn about all the organizations that are out there that offer free guides to help you. Some of them even offer mentors to help guide you. Find out about local support services. Find out about what educational services your child is entitled to. Get to every autism conference and seminar you can. I'll never forget the first autism conference that I went to. The first speaker was a beautiful, brilliant woman named Dr. Doreen Graham-Pichet. She spoke about a therapy called Applied Behavioral Analysis, or ABA. She told about how it could improve the life of children with autism, and in some cases, recover them. Now, despite the fact that Wyatt had been diagnosed for over a year, nobody had told me about this therapy. I remember calling my husband on the cell phone and saying, honey, I met the woman who is going to help improve Wyatt's life. And I'm happy to say that 8 years later, that's true. Are you feeling a little overwhelmed by all the information that's out there? Well, you're not alone. But try different approaches for your child. Trust your gut. Just 40 short years ago, mothers were told if their child had autism that they would have to be institutionalized, and in some cases they were actually blamed for their child's autism for failing to bond with the child. That was called refrigerator mother syndrome. Well, thank goodness times have changed. So until next time, learn everything you can about autism and keep the faith.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're at the ABCs and XYZs of Special Needs Conference. And this year, for the first time, they've got something really remarkable. It's the Entrepreneurial Boutique. These are all items that have been made and are being sold by individuals who have special needs. So we're going to do a little shopping and talk to some of these fabulous entrepreneurs. Come on.
My name is Molly Rarick, and I'm founder of Breed's Gift. We're a nonprofit that serves teens and adults with special needs, like Chase here. We were founded in 2013 and serve people in the Conejo Valley, Santa Barbara, and LA.
Our main objective is to give our participants the skills they need to gain a more independent life.
My name is Shelley Cox, and Lisa Zalagi and I are founders of Creative Steps and Create Micro Business Enterprises. And the items that we're selling here today are all made by the clients who have passions about what they want to make, and then they get the profits from what they make after we've paid all of the other expenses.
We are here today because my goal is to be independent, and also I would like to share all my artwork, and I would like to sell.
Thinking about at his young age being a businessman, it's amazing. I cannot be more proud.
And we are back with Let's Talk Autism, and now we have a very special guest joining us from Ireland.
Yes, we are very excited with it. He's got a lovely Irish accent. Rob Laffin is joining us. He's the CEO of Tippytop, and he's going to talk to us a little bit about what that is, although we have talked about a little this with a very special family a couple of weeks ago. But first of all, welcome to Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy. Rob?
Thank you very much, guys. Great to be here. Delighted for the opportunity to talk to you guys. You mentioned my accent there, so if I'm running away with my accent a bit, just pull me back.
No, we're loving it.
We do love it.
It's a vacation for us.
It is.
I will try and make things as clear and concise as I possibly can.
Well, and you are the CEO and founder of Tippytop. Let's tell everybody again what Tippytop is. So first tell us what it is, Rob.
Okay, I'll start you from the very, very start. In 2010, I used to work as a pharmaceutical sales rep. And we had a very, very bad downturn in the Irish economy, and a lot of people lost jobs, including me. I spent 2 years unemployed and decided to try and upskill my education to see if I could get a job, find out where the jobs were in my hometown. Everything pointed towards engineering. I enrolled in an engineering course then in 2012, and about 6 weeks into the course, we realized that my daughter had autism.
And how old? I'm sorry to interrupt. How old was she at the time?
She was just gone her second birthday, but she showed all the signs that autism was there.
Okay.
My wife and I put 2 and 2 together and knew what we were facing, and then we went down the challenging road of trying to get a diagnosis.
Right.
So she got her diagnosis approximately a year later, but we knew what we were facing. It was all autism, all the signs were there, the stimming, the non-interaction with us, the no eye contact, toilet training was difficult, it just ticked all the boxes. Autism was top of the list. So while I was in college, I decided right there and then that I was going to do something or create something that would help my daughter. And it was initially to help my daughter. So I knew I was going to do something with the technology that I'd learned in the new course I was doing to help autism in some sort of form or manner. So 2015 rolled around. I was just about to finish up my degree in robotics and automation, and I got the brainwave of how about creating Tippytop? How about a picture-based communication system that can not only translate to people in the same room, that can also translate text messages to people who are at the other side of the world if needs be.
And honestly, this is because, there are many apps out there that deal with a picture exchange or an iconic communication system. But one of the things that I think is so amazing about Tippytop, and maybe it could only have been invented by a dad who has a nonverbal child, is that you really understand all the things that come along with communication. And you talk very eloquently about communication being an amazing privilege that people take for granted, and that how isolating it can be when people don't have it. So talk about the difference with Tippytop and how you conceived this idea of communication without walls.
Okay. So what happened originally was I created the device, and Sadie, my daughter, was using the kind of picture exchange communication system as it was. That had its downfalls, it had its flaws. She's sensory processing disorder, so there was a lot of chewing and ripping of PEX images. There was the 3-4 hours a night every Sunday that me and my wife would sit down with the printer and the laminator and get the next week's worth of pictures ready to just have everything going, So what I did was, on the first original Tippytop, I programmed it with all of Sadie's unique images that she understood, images that she got, and there was no questions about what was what, or what she had to pick up to use something else, So I'll give you an example. One of the images that I put on Sadie's Tippytop screen was a picture of our fridge freezer in our home.
Which is so much more powerful when trying to teach it to somebody who's learning language, because they're going to understand their refrigerator first.
Absolutely. So that was the kind of the start of the basis of the whole personalization side of Tippytop. Communication seemed to happen a lot faster when there was personal images that an adult or a child could relate to directly, things that are in their everyday lives. When it came to Sadie's food selection, Sadie's foods would have been put on her plate at her plate setting by her chair at her table. So everything in the image was familiar. There was no confusion, there was nothing. That's my mac and cheese, I'm going to pick my mac and cheese.
And then this translates into personalized text messages.
Personalized text message. If I can get this working here, guys, I can give you a quick example. I hope you can see the screen on it now.
Yes, we can. We've got
some images too,
images
where
ourselves.
We're showing the folks at home.
So that's just kind of a list of contact people that may be on a person's Tippytop. So maybe we want to talk to this lady here, Mom.
We see it.
Yeah.
And it will say out the word loud. It's a bit too difficult to hear it now at the minute. So then it goes into a category screen, and I love this little one here. It's a Sadie Says category. I'll just touch it there. So that's a picture of Sadie, and it says Sadie Says. So you got your basic communication inside there. So they're like, yes, no, hello, I love you, goodbye, whatever. And she often likes to tell Daddy or Mommy she loves. So the green tick signifies then that the message has been sent. And just a second there now. I hope you can see it. You see the text message has just come through there?
Yes.
Mom,
yes.
Sadie says, I love you.
Oh, how wonderful.
Which is so powerful, because it, there was always the limitation with any kind of iconic communication system of that you had to be right there.
Yes.
And so many of us took for granted. My son's about to be 14, and I text him all the time at school, and I'm able to communicate with him. And I got to be honest, Rob, that I hadn't stopped to think about the fact that, that isn't available for a lot of people.
No.
Because you don't think about what you don't know.
No.
So this is brilliant.
So what this led me down an even further journey to I suppose I've been at Tippytop now for the last year and a half, I suppose, between developing it and researching it and getting all the information I can need. But we've now identified something that's really, really, really important to the autism community and the community of disabled people at large.
Yes, not just those with autism, but there are many that can't communicate, correct?
Not just those with autism, but like we've got users from very, very elderly people who have difficulty speaking from stroke down to children as young as 2 and 3 who are using Tippytop successfully.
That's
but
amazing.
What it's let us develop is we found out now that Tippytop is actually slowly morphing into a platform for our non-verbal loved ones and individuals to be more socially included in society.
Absolutely.
Tell us about some of the impact it's had on people around the world. Can you share with us some personal stories?
Sure, no problem. This is the best part of the job, being honest with you. I get emails regularly from lots of different people around the world saying that, like, thank you so much. My son has communicated with me for the first time. He only asked for an apple, but it was a breakthrough. He got his apple. He's happy. We've got a gentleman in the UK by the name of, I'll just say his first name. His name is Jamie. He's 22 years old. Jamie uses Tippytop proficiently now to request what he's going to have for his supper from his dad. But the beautiful thing about this, when he texts his mom, it's all about feelings and emotions. So you can already see the divide that this gentleman has with a connection towards his father and his mother. His mother is the loving woman who gives him care and hugs and whatever, and his daddy is the doer. He's the person who does things and gets things done. We've had another contact from a lady in British Columbia. Her name is Wendy. She's got an 8-year-old daughter who now communicates with her mom and her dad, even though her parents are separated. One of them lives in the US, one lives in Canada. But even it's brought that family closer together in a more communicative way because their daughter is communicating with both of them.
It really is a very amazing thing, and you have pointed out that this has far-reaching effects, as you just talked about with your relationships with people, but that then feeds into the rest of your life and being able to work a job, and you really are breaking down barriers, Rob. It's really amazing, and to know that it came from a dad who was looking for a solution for his daughter, it's amazing.
And this has actually helped Sadie. Tell us about that. In terms of she's improved.
The first prototype I built actually filled it full of Sadie's images, and it was a big, robust device that I soldered together and created. And it broke my heart to get it right anyway. But anyway, I had it inside in our living room for about 2 days, and Sadie was interacting with it, but she was just sending meaningless messages that had no context to him whatsoever. And I knew she was just getting used to the system. So it was April 2015. I had left my house, and I got a text message from Sadie as I was entering a fast food outlet. Daddy, I want chicken nuggets. So needless to say, I went into the fast food outlet, tears down my eyes.
Yes.
Can I have some chicken nuggets, please? As I was leaving the fast food outlet, got a second text message. Daddy, get me some fries. Some fries. Jumped in the car. I was 1.5 miles from my house. Came in the door with the chicken nuggets and the fries. And immediately she took them out of my hand and was delighted, went off into the corner, ate her chicken nuggets and had her fries. So it was right then, at that moment, the feeling that I got from being able to communicate with my daughter who's non-verbal, I knew right there and then I had a social obligation to try and pass on what I created to other family members just like mine.
Amazing.
And that was the goal.
Amazing. The things that other people would take so much for granted, and
Right.
yet
And-
what a pivotal moment that your daughter can text you and say, I want
Absolutely.
chicken and fries. So how do people get this, Rob?
Okay, it's at this moment. I'll actually tell you what's happening for the future. We're about 70% through the build of Tippytop version 2. So Tippytop version 2 is more or less aimed towards the classroom situations, so that special needs assistants have communication with nonverbal students, teachers have communication, and it's going to be a two-way communication option as well. At this minute in time, Tippytop sends one text, but you can't reply. So V2 will have a reply option on it, along with a lot of other additional features. We are also creating a web portal system whereby the professionals or the caregivers can go in and log in at any time and track the data that their nonverbal individuals or loved ones are sending on a 24-hour, 7-day a week basis. So we're going to chart and graph and map all that stuff out and feed it back to the professionals to try and help them in their profession as much as we possibly can. The more research we're doing into it, this seems to be uncaptured data that's out there, and the academia are really trying to get their hands all over this to see what metrics they can see that are behind it that possibly may help future research with autism.
Wonderful.
So V1 at this minute in time is just an app. It's available on the App Store, iOS, it's available on Google Play, and we just recently launched it on Amazon Kindle. The reason we put it out on Amazon Kindle is because the devices are pretty cheap, and if my child breaks a $60 device, I'm not going to lose sleep. If my child breaks a $600 iPad, I'm going to start losing some sleep.
Right.
If you get me.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So
And
it's
completely.
widely accessible.
And I'm on iPad number 4.
Well, I love that you're thinking in those kinds of ways because that helps more and more people. So they can get it at the App Store. Is there a cost associated with the app?
Every single person that comes over to trial Tippytop is automatically introduced to a 30-day free trial. It's a try before you buy. If you feel that Tippytop makes a difference in your life and you're happy to continue, there's two options then after that. There's a monthly option of $14.99, or there's a yearly option of $99.99. And that's something we are working on as well with version 2 to try and actually lower the cost of that. We're trying to get that under the $10 a month mark.
Okay. A really reasonable, I mean, when I think about how much we pay for our cell service and text messaging, it's a really reasonable amount of money when you want to be able to communicate with your child.
Sure, absolutely.
Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, sure, I was just agreeing with you. Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
So again, so people can be checking these out. I am terribly interested in the academic version. You know, we've started something here on the show called Autism in the Classroom, so I'm going to want to talk to you more about that.
Sure, I've got a fairly substantial. I suppose I'd call these guys famous in the autism world. Would be part of our advisory board. So I can put it to them that I was talking to you guys.
Yes.
These guys have been keynote speakers at many, many conferences. They're well respected, they're well renowned in their field. And these guys are giving us all the advice and help that we need in order to make Tippytop version 2 the best it possibly can be.
It's wonderful.
Well, I think what you're doing is incredible. And I also want to point out that some of it came out of adversity because so many times our families go through moments where they think it's absolutely devastating. And you told the story, but you kind of glossed over the fact that right at the same time you were losing your job and being unemployed for 2 years, your child was diagnosed with autism, and I'm just guessing that that wasn't a comfortable time.
Well, do you know what? My attitude towards Sadie and her autism, I never beat myself with a brush or said, "Poor me, my child is autism." I had my 24 hours of I suppose being miserable about it, but after that it was just a case of like, okay, she's got autism. Aren't I the lucky one? Aren't I the lucky one? I don't have to go and visit a gravestone every day to see my daughter. I don't have to go to a ward where my daughter's terminally ill that I may say goodbye to her at any stage. I'm the lucky one. So with that attitude then, it was up to me to say, okay, I'm going to do the best I possibly can for my daughter.
Well, you've done a great job.
You sure have, and for many others with autism and with other conditions where they need to communicate. You've done, you know, your disability was truly your opportunity in this case, and you've made a great opportunity out of it.
Absolutely, and I think it's time for. This is just my opinion, but it's time for people to stop grieving about the child that they could have had and just absolutely embrace and love and adore the child that they do have.
So true.
Because that's when you see so much benefits and so much coming out of them.
Yeah.
Sadie is verbal now. She is speaking 15 to 20 words she has nowadays.
Isn't that great? And you think that's because of the use of the app?
Yeah. Yeah, she just this morning, I was a little bit late getting out of bed, and I got a little kick in the backside, and she told me to get out.
I love it. Well, and you know, studies bear that out. So often families go, oh, I don't want to use an iconic communication system. I don't want my child to have an augmentative assistive device. I want them to speak. But studies show very clearly that kids that get functional communication through those methods are the ones who speak quicker.
Right. You're absolutely right. And studies show that 80% of kids that use AAC devices actually have a better chance of verbalizing than those that don't.
That's right.
Well, congratulations on that with Sadie.
Tippytop. We absolutely love it. You'll have to come back, and when you've got version 2 up, you'll have to come back for Autism in the Classroom, and we'll have to do a demo.
Excellent.
All right.
Thank you for joining
so
us.
much.
Good luck to you and your family.
And enjoy that good Irish weather you're enjoying right now.
That's probably the last I'll see of it now till next year.
Okay.
All right. Take care. Thank you so much.
No worries. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
What a delightful man. We're going to take a short break and then be back to finish out the show. Stick with us.
Are those your eyes? Is that your smile? I've been looking at you forever, yet I never saw you before. Are these your hands?
As a celebrity, whatever that means, you want to do what you can to give back. The way I've always looked at it, if I'm available, I'm going to be there. And when you get there and you see what folks are doing and the lives that they're touching, how can you not want to continue to be a part of it?
And for the first time, I am looking in your eyes.
What can we all do to make a difference? Not only with trying to find a cure, but to help the children and the families that may not have the resources for these kids.
When you're looking back at me, now I understand what...
None of us are doing enough, but I think that we're doing as much as we possibly can. Because we all live in society, and the more we can all do to help society, the more it helps all of us.
And for the first time, I am looking in your eyes. And for the first time, I'm seeing who you are. I can't believe how much I see when you're looking back at me. Now I understand what love is. Love is. For the first time.
We are back, and that was so inspirational. The father that created something out of need for his daughter.
Absolutely, and I want to thank, we had a comment that came in on YouTube. It said, this sounds amazing. Can't wait to try it on my 3-year-old. I loved your story about the drive-through. What a rewarding experience. Life-proof case is a pretty helpful. Our little guy has definitely caused some damage to our phones and tablets. I also have an almost 7-year-old with cerebral palsy, so I bet this would be helpful for him as well. I would think so. And those life-proof cases, they're really expensive. They're as much as and more than the Kindle. But if you have an iPad, yes, they're really expensive. But you can get ones that are waterproof, so that if you have an iPad that you want to protect, and you have a kid that throws the iPad in the pool, they're pretty amazing. And then also we had somebody who wrote in with a medication question that is above our pay grade, but we'll see if I can get it to somebody. And then we had somebody ask, how and when should I tell my 6-year-old son he has autism, he's high functioning, and I see he's starting to notice and ask questions as to why he is different from other kids, etc. Thank you. He's also experiencing a lot of anxiety, negative talk, and emotions. So what to do? You know, we had another guest from Ireland on just a couple of weeks ago, and she's, maybe Samantha, you can help me remember her name because I can't at the moment. Marie Brilli.
Okay.
See, Samantha's so awesome. She's got a book that's just affirmations for people who are on the autism spectrum. It's a beautiful book, and there's just one affirmation per page, so it's not something that you have, not complicated. You can be reading that with a 6-year-old and pick out their categories that you can pick out sayings, so that self-talk, because we all have a tape that runs in our head constantly, and if it's negative, you're going to feel negative. If it's positive, you start to feel positive. But as far as when and how do you tell, there's a study that's being done about that in Calgary that's called the elephant in the room study, and it's different for every family. Maybe Nancy, you can weigh in. I know for us, we used the word autism from the time that Jem was diagnosed, and we used it with him in the room because I was so fearful that somebody else would use the word, and I didn't want him to have any negative connotations that came from somebody else, so I just heaped it on myself and made it as positive as possible. And then we wrote a children's book, which is basically a social story about him having autism, and that it's just one of the things that he has.
I also brought it up fairly early with Wyatt and told him he has autism and that he just thinks differently, and it just, he often wanted to know why he had teachers, therapists. And I said, because you need extra help communicating. Because you have autism. And, he seems to be pretty aware of it now. And I do think sometimes, if your child's aware of it, it might be a good time to bring it out in the open.
Absolutely. I think when they're asking questions and saying, why am I different?
Right.
I think those are good indicators. But you got to make the decision for yourself.
Yeah,
and I think
very personal.
All the experts and all the people that I know who are on the autism spectrum, the one thing that is widely agreed upon is that make sure that every single word that you use with it is positive.
Yeah.
That it's not a backpack full of hammers that we're giving them when we tell them there's a diagnosis. It's it's like saying you're the difference between a Mac and a PC.
Right.
That's all it is.
Think differently.
They both function.
Right.
They both do things. They just get there in a different way. So in any case, we earlier today we showed the video of the interview that you did yesterday with Corey and Courtney.
With Corey Feldman and Courtney.
And it was really lovely. They are lovely.
They are. And Corey is quite an activist. He's going to be doing a special event next week. On Wednesday. And it's going to start at 12 o'clock Pacific Coast time, 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
It's
called Corey's Autism Angels, and it's a 4-hour telethon of sorts. Where he's going to be joined by celebrity friends and helping raise money for ACT Today, Autism Care and Treatment Today.
I talked about this earlier, and somebody said, can they donate if they're outside the U.S.? And we want to let you know that, yes, you can, and we welcome your donations. And that where do they want to go to make the donation?
They want to go to act-today.org.
Okay, and there's a button there it's Corey's Angels, and there's a button right there that you can click to donate, and that takes PayPal and all major credit cards, and you can do it international. And we appreciate, and I talked extensively earlier about how important it is that we are able to give grants to a wide variety of people, and that's where the money comes from.